The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning, and welcome to the Voice of Charity. I'm Katie Breedeman, and we thank you for joining us today. Recently, Sally Blount, President and CEO of Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago, welcomed Carrie Robinson to the Windy City. Carrie is the new President and CEO of Catholic Charities USA, which is based in Alexandria, Virginia. While she was in town, Carrie Robinson had a powerful conversation with Cardinal Blaise Cupich about the work of Catholic Charities in the United States and in the Archdiocese of Chicago. This discussion was moderated by Sally Blount, and it was held during an evening event at St. Joseph and Francis Xavier Parish in Wilmette. The topic discussed was Imagining Abundance, Faith, Hope, and Charity in Today's World. We'd like to share some of this important discussion with you.
You know, on this topic of generosity and on this topic of being present to human suffering, you know, one of the things I've learned is Jesus forms us through our own experiences of compassion or our own experiences of suffering, even in small ways. And I know for me, because for many years I was a single mother, I have a particular heart for the exhaustion and how challenging it is to be a single mother, and I didn't do it in poverty. And so I think one of the questions I want to have for each of you is there a particular aspect of human suffering that draws on your hearts with greater urgency, that where Jesus speaks to you with a particular poignancy from your own experience?
I think it's the poverty that people feel alone. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily food or material things, is that they've been abandoned and we have excluded them from their mindset, that they don't have a place at the table of life. And that's why I think it's always important, you know, the Pope said this over and over again, we have to think about the poor not as the recipients of our generosity, but as proactive agents, as somebody who something to offer us in terms of how they maybe are more spontaneously generous. You know, my mother and my father didn't have a lot of money, but they were spontaneously generous, and so my hope would be that, you know, for all of us, when we donate to the various causes and so on, we don't stop there. We try to engage real people who are poor. Just to let them know they're not alone, because I think that's so very important. They tell that story of Fulton Sheehan, who was visiting a leper colony, and he was giving all of them a medal or a rosary or something, and he came across this man whose hand was just eaten up. He had maybe one finger left, and so he took the rosary or the medal and just dropped it in his hand and walked off. And then he came back. He was so ashamed of himself. He took it out of his hand and pressed it there. He wanted to make connection with that man. And Fulton Sheehan told that story often because he wanted to remind himself that there's a two-way transaction when you help the poor. They have something to offer us, and we have something more than our riches to offer them. We have our connection with them to let them know they're not alone.
We did not rehearse this, but I have a very similar response. And the Surgeon General has declared that the United States has an epidemic of isolation and loneliness. That kind of poverty, of loneliness, compounded with material poverty, pulls at my heartstrings. We're all in this together. We need each other. One of the things that has drawn me to Catholic Charities here and across the country is people are experiencing incredible loneliness and anxiety about poverty, about mental illness, about addiction, all kinds of social challenges. They're experiencing their darkest days, but they know that they can find mercy at Catholic Charities. And it's not just that humanitarian aid is given in that moment. It is the way we, as people of faith, are called to a ministry of presence. We attend to the dignity of the person before us, and that evokes in us some tenderness. It also strikes me that whatever the presenting challenge is, if it's hunger, it leads, because of this ministry of presence and mercy and human dignity, it always leads to a continuum of care, to these wraparound services that are aimed at not just providing food or aid in that moment, but lifting people and families out of that poverty. Every volunteer that I know, and I do believe that being other-centered is the antidote to isolation and loneliness, every volunteer that I encounter always says the same thing: I received far more than I gave. So we're on to something here that I think systemically our nation needs.
You know, we've even been finding, as we keep evolving as an organization, as many of you know, we have something like 22 senior housing buildings. And when they were first built, the idea was that you were giving people a dignified and beautiful home, and that community would happen. And yet it's become harder for people to build community. And we're beginning to find drug addiction challenges in these senior homes because of the loneliness epidemic. And one of the things we want to double down on is getting behavioral health services into those senior homes. And it was something we didn't even imagine 20 years ago would be needed. So I think it is part of this bigger issue as we're called to serve. It's quite powerful. So the two of you probably know better than any of us, because of the rooms that you walk in, the church is human. And it cannot meet all human need. It cannot alleviate all suffering. And I think, yet I've found that that's one of the hardest things sometimes for we as Christians to sit with, right? Is to see the suffering and say, why can't we solve it? And even with the migrants, people say, why aren't we solving it, right? Why can't we? And so I guess I wanted to know how each of, Cardinal, how have you wrestled with that as you've ministered over the years? How have you made sense of seeing the suffering that we can't solve in your own mind?
Well, Jesus himself said, the poor will always have with you. He recognized that he couldn't cure poverty either, and so I think that, as I said earlier, I don't think we should look upon the poor as a problem to solve, but as a presence within our lives that helps us to become more human, and to see that kind of connection with them is a gift to us as well as our gift to them. So I think that's why I really think that it's not about throwing money at issues and making sure that the people are not materially poor. I think that we have to make sure that people have the resources, but it's going to be we're going to make an inroad on fighting poverty by helping people, by building connections with people, and letting them know that they count, that they're part of the table of life. So that's where I put my emphasis. I don't have any illusion that during my lifetime we're going to have an equal equality with regard to financial resources for everybody. That would not be curing poverty, because there'd be another kind of poverty out there. So we just slog away with it. But I want the emphasis always on helping people make connections with each other. I think that's the real battle for us.
That true
it's not the
encounter.
Material thing. It's making sure that people count.
Yeah.
And it is what Pope Francis enjoins us to do: encounter and accompany people different than us. That is a benefit to both in that relationship. Yeah.
I remember I once heard Father Carci, who is our seminary, is he the rector, is that his title? He once said that you aren't really encountering the other until you're uncomfortable. Because if you're comfortable, it's not the other, right? It's when we truly get uncomfortable because they are so different than us that we're really pushing ourselves spiritually. And I was really, he says many smart things, as you know, but that really shaped me. Yeah. Cardinal, there are so many places of need, so many Catholic organizations. The parishes need help. Catholic Charities needs help. Catholic Extension does mighty work. We were talking about it. Catholic Relief Services is another organization. How can we help all of us? How do you help us think about all these different places coming at us asking for help? How can we help make sense of where to place our funds, our time, and not just feel overwhelmed?
Well, it's true. There are many good causes. We have in the Archdiocese a lot of organizations. You have Misericordia, you have Mercy Home, you have Catholic Extension, you have Maryville, you have Catholic Charities, you have parishes, the Archdiocese, and then of course we have Notre Dame, and they're all over the place here in Chicago. I think that if everybody does something, we can get it all done. My concern is that, by and large, and we know this historically, in terms just of parish support depends really on the generosity of about a third of the people who are registered in parishes. If we could get a little uptick and have everybody have skin in the game, we'd be better off, because that way we're co-responsible for the church. And people don't have to give their whole life savings to projects. But if we all give to the degree that we're able to make a sacrificial gift, all of these causes can be met. I'm convinced of that. But and that's why I think all of you and your friends and all the rest of it to challenge one another to look for ways in which you can all join together in making sure that the resources are there for all of these good causes. I support all of them. I'm for all of them. I go to every dogfight possible for a fundraiser, for an organization, and I'm the champion for each one of them, and I want them to succeed. And they're going to succeed only if we get everybody involved.
One of the things I'm struck by, even when I show you the data on the income distribution, free market economies are the most efficient, let me be clear, systems at creating wealth and creating jobs. And so the opportunity, how do we use those resources, and how are we ready to share them on behalf? And if we all just open our pockets a little bit more, there is enough there. There is enough there to make a difference. So I appreciate your saying that. Carrie, this is a new role for you as the leader of a social justice organization, because you've been doing campus ministry and then you've been doing the leadership development and organizational development in the church at the Leadership Round Table. And I've been thinking, you really are now the advocate for the country's front line on charity. If you think about being the member, leads the membership organization for all the Catholic charities across all the dioceses, that full network that is confronting need for our nation. How do you dream of helping to strengthen and equip us all? Like in your heart of what is, when you think about that front line across the states, across the borders, how do you dream of doing that? And how do you dream of helping us here in Chicago?
Well, one of the things that I'm really excited about in this role is being able to tell stories and to tell them in a compelling way. Stories about clients who were served, families who were lifted out of poverty, stories about full-time frontline workers all across this country who, in the name of our faith, are responding to the suffering of others. I want to tell the stories of volunteers, of donors, of board members. There is so much generosity and so much that ennobles one's spirit tied up in the Catholic Charity story. I have loved being here today. I have met so many people associated with Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago. It has just made me much better informed. It's rejuvenated my spirit. I get to see friends like Cardinal Cupich, who I haven't seen in a while. It's just been wonderful. So I want to be a really good advocate and storyteller. I think this work helps lend integrity to the church, and I think it helps us be a more merciful nation.
You told me the first time I met you that you felt called to the ministry of presence, and I have to say I've seen it with you, of just your ability to listen when someone tells you a story is really quite magnificent. So thank you for spending that time with us. And I know you two have some wonderful stories about how you both listen to each other over the years.
I've known Carrie over 20 years, I think. You were in grade school, weren't you? Yeah. But we've been on a number of projects together over the years, lay ministry to leadership roundtable to foundation work and so on. So it's good to be back with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, we have some time for a couple of questions about the mission of charity and our call as Christians, and so we'd love to consider them. We have a hand up here. I don't know where our mics are.
Is your microphone?
Mics are coming. Hold on one second.
Yeah, let the microphone come.
We want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Fred Biederman from St. Patrick's Lake Forest, and I wanted to share something that I've heard through professional people on suicide prevention, and to address what you were talking about, loneliness. Loneliness, according to them, is as bad for the body as smoking. And so your efforts against combating loneliness are extremely important. And anything we can do to help, let's talk about it. Thank you.
And you know, we have a wonderful ministry that Father Ruby started called the Lost Ministry that walks beside families who've experienced suicide and helps them find hope again. And it's one of our little gems that's really quite extraordinary. And we want to grow that ministry for exactly the reasons you talk about.
And I'd like to put in a plug for you to keep following efforts down in Springfield to have a law for assisted suicide. It really does prey on people who many times have given up on their life and really have difficulties. So if we open the door to that, I remember it was fought back in Massachusetts when Victoria Kennedy, who was a widow of Ted Kennedy, had a full-blown campaign against it, in which she talked about the final years and months of Ted's life and how they were some of the richest moments in his life because he allowed his life to die naturally rather than giving in to assisted suicide. So I think we want to keep that on our radar screen and make sure that we do everything possible to not let that happen in our state.
All right. Another question?
So with everything you've got on your plate at Catholic Charities and rising up the staff, how did you have the courage and the openness, both Sally and the Cardinal, to take on the migrant work, which has been huge?
Well, I was going to say, first of all, we have one of the biggest advocates when it comes to partnering with the government to say we want to help. And so I want to be clear that if you want to make a difference, having Cardinal Cupich, and one of your superpowers really is your ability to speak to power with frankness. And so that has been incredibly important as we've navigated how we can make a difference. Because one of the things we learned from our sister Catholic Charities, we did do a lot of phone calls. You know how I told you I wanted more networking. We called Washington, we called New York, and what they told us is say, pick one thing that you're going to do well, because you can't be everything to everybody. You can't solve the whole problem. And Amy Novarita, our chief program officer, and Marie Jochum, and a group of people really sat down and thought, and they came back with a proposal to me that we think that we could do the long-term resettlement. And so they talked to the government, and you talked to the government because they said, we want to do this work, but you've got to cover our costs, right? Because we still have our full-time day jobs that we're raising money for, and we can't step away from that need that we were created to do. And so I think it was all that partnership and the ability to speak to the government at many levels. You know, Cardinal Cupich, you cover the governor, I cover the deputy and the chiefs of staff, and it's basically working all levels so that we could get the partnership there. And it really was quite miraculous. I don't know, does that get at the question?
Well, we are motivated because we are an immigrant country and we are an immigrant church. The church was the one who welcomed these immigrants who are our ancestors who built this whole archdiocese. It's in our DNA. But just to make sure you understand, I sat down with city officials when this first came and offered 10 different places where they could house people. And only one now has been finally used. I didn't think we needed all these tent cities and all these other things because we told them there'd be no rent. All we wanted was they needed to take care of safety for these people, and they needed to indemnify Catholic Charities and ourselves if there was any crime that was committed. That's all we asked. So we did get a lot of cooperation with the governor throughout the state. It was a little more tough sledding with the city for reasons that are not even clear to me. We're still in the game, however, and we want to partner with any government agency to get it done. We have the resources, we have the buildings, and we'll continue to work with people.
And the other thing I have to add, Anne, is on top of the government, the community has been unbelievably generous. We have raised millions of dollars because of generous donors. We gave out over 7,500 gift cards at Christmas, $50 gift cards. We had stories of families that walked 5 miles because they heard we were giving out the gift cards and they wanted money to buy presents for their children. And they walked 5 miles to get those gift cards. We've given out over, because of the generosity, 5,000 venture cards. Because of the Archdiocesan Parish Family Sponsorship Special Collection, there are different parishes are walking with more than 150 families on the long-term accompaniment. This just isn't the quick touch and be gone. They are walking through many parishes with 6 months or a year of getting them wraparound services, helping them learn how to get groceries, get English language courses. Some of the wealthier parishes where people don't want to settle are donating to the fund so that the parishes that are located in the Latin communities can do more. And so it was this foundation to do the work at scale with the government, but then I have to say the unbelievable generosity. And so if you want to do something for migrants, by and large, we have had the money to do anything we could dream of, that we could staff and handle the complexity of and all those. And it's really been quite extraordinary and quite gratifying. And that the story is one of hope.
I know all of you work with government agencies to try to get the funding, but the funding has been drastically cut, especially in the school area. What can we do to help?
One of the things we want to get more organized on, and Carrie's got to be the lead, so I'm going to let you do it, but is advocacy, because we've got to do more to advocate for schools, for migrants. I'm going to pass this one over to you both.
Yeah, so the Catholic Charities USA, the office that I oversee, is located in Alexandria, Virginia, for a reason. We have a government relations team that advocates on behalf of the clients Catholic Charities serves and on behalf of our agencies. There is tremendous moral credibility in the unity of the Catholic Church on these important social issues. And the more we can galvanize together on behalf of just policies and humane bills, the better.
Cardinal, do you want to talk more about that in
Well,
Springfield?
we are very strong in advocacy for full funding, but as we heard earlier from Sally, there was a withdrawal from a number of government contracts simply because the funds that Catholic people were donating were really making up the shortfall, the difference between what the state said they would give us, and over time that seemed to diminish, and increasingly then donations of the people who support Catholic Charities was actually funding government programs. And there was a break point in which that really made no sense anymore. If the state wanted these programs, they should pay for them. And that's why, decisions were made with regard. It really doesn't make any sense. We have to fund the things that are in our wheelhouse. If the state has programs, let them do that, but we know what we want to do.
And the programs and what we're doing, so we're taking the same funding, but instead of using the donations to fund government contracts, we're doing them to fund the ministries that are here for mothers. It's the more work we're doing with mothers. It's the more work we're doing with seniors. And we are still the largest human services organization in the region, and we have immense support from the government and respect. I mean, the governor takes your call, Cardinal.
Yeah, I mean, all of these elected officials are very good about taking my calls, and I always say to them when they come into office, and I congratulate them, I want you to succeed, because for the good of society, we need to have strong leaders who step forward. And I never want to make it personal or anything else, but there is a point in which we have to do what we know we have to do. And the state has their own work to do, and that's fine. And if we can come together on some projects, that's fine too.
Well, and as you know, the discussions we've had, and Carrie's been talking with us about this, and Cardinal, you and I have talked for many hours, it's also changing the dialogue. Because when they came to do the migrant work with us, they said, well, we will cover the full cost. We won't, right? And so that was really important. The state did that. So that when we've gotten the donation dollars, we've been able to use those specifically for Catholic on top of that, and use the ministry into the parishes and in the ways that's uniquely of our faith.
Well, and the governor told me point blank, you know what you're doing with this. There's no reason for us to try to replicate it.
And he told you there was no one else he would ask.
Yeah, there was nobody else that they would ask. So, that's the credibility of this organization that it enjoys.
And in Washington too. Yeah. Are we out of time for questions, or one more? One more, excellent.
Good evening, Felicia Blakely from St. John 23rd in Evanston. Cardinal, thank you for mentioning Mercy Home. I am on the Board of Regents for Mercy Home, and my question really is about young people. And the work that we do at Mercy Home is really to support and provide those wraparound services for our young people. The question is, how can we do more to inspire young people to a life of service and also faith?
I would say that that's really down the alley of our renewal efforts in the Archdiocese right now that we're working on. We have, I think, really some opportunities of success that we've seen happening in some of the experiments we've been done in parishes, especially to go after young people, to have more interest. Young people have a generous heart, but they need to be invited, and they also need to be given a task that's achievable for them. I think that you want to make sure that you focus on a particular project. It doesn't have to have a long shelf life, because they're busy with a lot of other things. We have to be creative in fact getting more younger people involved in that kind of life of service. But I have said this before. For our renewal efforts to be successful in the Archdiocese, which we started with Renew My Church, and we're moving forward with the spiritual renewal, I want to have a liaison in every parish with Catholic Charities. I think there should be somebody in each parish, a group of people who in fact intersect with the work of Catholic Charities and get people in the parishes to be involved in volunteering, donating, or whatever, because Catholic Charities helps the Catholic Church put its best foot forward. And it is the means by which, in fact, we can witness to our faith in a very holistic way. So we're on this, and it is part of our renewal within the Archdiocese that we're undertaking at this time.
And there are things that the parishes can do better than Catholic Charities, and Catholic Charities can do at scale, and it's navigating that together, and especially with youth. I think that that's part of the navigation, is how do we combine forces, and how do we get, as we get more engaged, the Mercy Home, people learning more about the Mercy Home story, and the Misericordia story, and the Maryville. I mean, it is extraordinary, the riches we have here in the Archdiocese.
And we have to build a culture in which we help young people, everybody understand that there is joy in serving. There is real joy in serving. The happiest people I know are the folks who are in serving other people. I go to Lurie Hospital, for instance, on occasion, and I talk to those caregivers, those nurses and all the rest of it, who are bone tired at the end of the day, who see so much suffering and kids dying, suffering from cancer, and they're joyful people. They're some of the most joyful people I've seen, these nurses, when I go to different hospitals where people are suffering. And it's because there is something that brings about joy in the heart when you serve another person.
So it's time to wrap, and I just want to end where we started, and John will be closing us in a second, but the Holy Spirit is not asleep. There are so many wonderful things happening. You can see the heart of the Cardinal, that he influences all of us here in the Archdiocese. We have had the most inspiring day with Carrie today. I have to say, I think our team, when you met with them privately after lunch, was just blown away and heartened that you're there advocating for us. So I just want to thank you both for taking the time to be in dialogue tonight and to be leading all of us to do what we do and supporting us in our work each day. So thank you.
And I want to say very publicly that Sally is a great gift to Catholic Charities. When I appointed her 4 years ago and robbed her from the Kellogg School of Business, I knew that she wasn't just good at organizing. She had the mission as forefront to what she wanted to do. And we're just so blessed to have that kind of leadership. And she brings so many skills, but she also brings a missionary heart that really allows this work to have a soul. So thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you.